Hello, hello. Happy new moon and welcome to Wisdom Circles, discussions on menopause transition and other informative, humorous, empowering, sometimes humbling, and often ridiculous stories about aging. My name is Laura Libby, also known as burlesque performer Ophelia Flame, and I'm excited and honored to be your guest for these monthly informative discussions. And today we will feature a beloved and talented and iconic Alotta Boutté, my dear friend. But first, I'd like to share a little bit
Hello.
of a hello. I'd love to share a little bit about how we got to this very moment. So, in addition to being a burlesque performer and instructor for the last 30 years, I'm also a group fitness instructor and a massage therapist. But despite my love for anatomy and physiology and what I felt like was a deep connection to my body awareness, just to body awareness, my menopause transition has been a confusing experience with a myriad of symptoms ranging from mild to extreme that have been mostly ignored or misdiagnosed by uninformed medical professionals. So suddenly my whole life felt like it turned upside down, and I really felt like I was literally and figuratively slowly disappearing. And what I didn't know then was that this is really common and a powerful feeling during menopause transition. And the reason so many of us are in the dark about this huge life changing event involving our very own bodies has a long history of gatekeeping, misogyny, misinformation, shame, and fear. So now, 8 years into my own menopause roller coaster, I'm inspired to redefine and demystify aging by empowering women to be seen and heard while finding confidence and pleasure in living at any age. I'm currently studying to become a certified menopause support coach through Burl Education and creating my own program I plan on launching this year, but more on that later. So, to clarify, these discussions are for anyone at any age assigned an ovarian system and the folks that love them. By sharing our stories and inherent wisdom, our open discussions build knowledge, offer tools and resources to support so we can just better navigate our own unique experiences. And with an estimated 1.1 million women entering into menopause transition annually in the US alone, there's probably a good chance that you or someone you might know have some pressing questions and concerns about this physiological, biological, cultural, familial, and spiritual rite of passage. Menopause is a life change. It is not a disease or an affliction. So before we get started, I want to do a little bit of a vocabulary check, or just check in on vocabulary rather. So, on a generalized average, most people begin perimenopause around age 45, but it's completely different for every person based on personal health history, including mental health, such as childhood trauma or PTSD. This is when your hormones begin to shift, and the changes are usually gradual, and this can last from 2 years to well over a decade. The symptoms can include, but and are not limited to, and hopefully not all at once, irregular periods, hot flashes or flushes, chills, night sweats, mood swings, weight gain, particularly around the midsection, slowed metabolism, fatigue, insomnia, brain fog, anxiety, depression, irritability, moodiness, rage, and vaginal dryness. Just what it sounds like a party. So typically, but not always, menopause begins around the age 51, and and it has been a full 365 days since you've had a menstrual period, and the ovaries have gone into retirement, be that on their own or suddenly at any age by ways of surgery, such as a hysterectomy or an oophorectomy, or a medical treatment such as chemotherapy for cancer. And once that shift happens, you may still experience some of the symptoms, but they begin to lessen. So, postmenopause is when we settle into our new transformative selves, living to be hopefully the next 20 to 40 years. Menopause transition is the term for the whole wild ride. So, the term natural menopause is a term I prefer not to use, as it implies that there's only one way to experience the transition and that any other way is unnatural, which is a framework that's not only false, but it's also stigmatizing. I also think that while may work for some, the terms surgical or induced menopause are terms I also prefer not to use because they can feel unsupportive and insensitive to many people who have undergone procedures that didn't have them expressively to make menopause happen. And understandably, some folks might have some real hard feelings about menopause as an outcome. And this is not even to mention the long history of forced sterilization of women, which has rooted in just bogus eugenic theories and supports racism and sexism and is still fucking legal in 31 US states to this day. More simply, the term gradual menopause better helps to describe how people come to their transition by way of some kind of perimenopause process over time, while sudden menopause, which we'll be talking about a lot about today, is without the longer process of the perimenopause, and that may happen after a hysterectomy, which is the removal of the uterus, or the oophorectomy, or of maybe of the ovaries, or with some medical treatments such as chemotherapy for cancer. So today we're going to hear about our guest's journey and discuss menopause both as a sudden and gradual transition, as well as redefine some of our outdated ways of thinking about menopause. We welcome your questions and comments following what I imagine is going to be an informative and lively discussion. So, without further ado, Alotta Boutté is a lifelong performer and an international burlesque and cabaret sensation. Miss Boutté began tantalizing burlesque audiences nearly 25 years ago. So, when she was 3 years old, as a part of the award-winning all-black burlesque troupe Harlem Shake. She's been featured performer in festivals worldwide and shared the stage with the biggest and brightest in burlesque and cabaret. And for 2 years, she was the powerhouse chanteuse in the spectacular Mugler Follies in Paris. She currently resides in San Francisco and is a part of the world's largest running musical review, Beach Blanket Babylon. Please give a warm virtual welcome to Alotta Boutté.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello. So, Alotta, I know we've spent a lot of time discussing menopause by way of hysterectomy and aspects of aging, but I'd love for you to tell our viewers, in your own words, just hearing more about your personal experience in regard to your menopausal journey.
Well, I anticipated that I would potentially get early menopause because my mom swears that she started her menopause like a few years after my brother was born, and my brother was born when she was 33. So
Mm.
she swears that like her menopausal, perimenopausal stuff started in her mid to late 30s. She says 35. Um, and so I was ready for it. I was like, all right, here we go. Bracing for impact. Didn't happen. But my periods were, as I got into my late 30s, my periods started getting worse. I've always had very hard, heavy periods. I was that kid in the 6th grade who was in the fetal position under her desk and always had like the backup hoodie because I would bleed through everything the first 2 days. There were always like heavy, hard periods, but they were getting worse. I was like, we don't need worse. It's
No.
already we're good. Like we don't need worse. It's okay. And my partner at the time suggested I push for an ultrasound. And because my periods have just historically been bad, I was just told that they were just bad. But what they were is full of fibroids.
Mm.
I had an external fibroid that doubled the size of my uterus, a couple of other medium to large ones externally, and then just internally, there was some within the lining, and then internally, it was just riddled with tiny ones. And so the conversation I ended up having with my doctor at the time, she's like, well, do you and your partner want to try to have kids and all the things? Because our medical industry is very into making sure anyone with a uterus pumps out babies because
Right.
we need
It's really
more.
all we're
I
it's
know.
really all
It's
we're
all
gonna
it, it's all it is. Like if you have a uterus, you should be pumping out babies. That's the goal, right? I could barely afford the hospital visit with medical insurance and I'm queer. So having a baby, I'm not about to do a whoopsie baby situation. Um, I was like, "No," and what she told me was that if I were to attempt to get pregnant, it would be very difficult for me to get pregnant just due to the sheer amount of fibroids.
Mm.
And if I were to remove the larger ones, then the smaller ones would get fed and become larger ones. And it would be a whole process. And I know a friend who went through many fibroid removal processes in hopes of getting pregnant, and ended up going through several rounds of IVF
Mm.
before they finally said, "You have too much scar tissue from your removal surgeries." And they were like, "Why didn't you say anything?" They're like, "We didn't want you to lose hope." So that was ringing in my head as she's talking about, well, it would be difficult to get pregnant. And if you did get pregnant, it would be a difficult pregnancy. But if you want to try, I was like, "You've already, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
Nobody's putting, I'm not putting myself or any potential life through that because anyone with the uterus is supposed to be popping out babies. That's not what we're going to do here." So I opted for a hysterectomy. Sorry, being very long-winded about it.
Oh, no,
Opted for
it's
the
good.
hysterectomy. And I was told that if I had my ovaries removed, it would bring early onset menopause. So I opted to keep my ovaries because I was hoping for maybe a bit of a reprieve from the horrible periods and things, and removed both my uterus and cervix because historically I had a HPV genital wart situation and abnormal cells on the cervix. It hasn't happened in 20 years, but they were like, "Let's just take that out anyway." And I said, "That sounds great." And so they removed all of that. And it was interesting because I haven't lived my life conducive to planning for children. While all my friends were getting married and popping out babies, I got a memo to go to Paris. Like, I didn't get the baby bearing memo. I got the, "Hey, want to be a showgirl in Paris" memo. And I was like, "Deuces, I'm out. See you in see, see you
Totally.
in Paris. See you at the Eiffel Tower." Um,
Mhm.
and so I had feelings come up around not having birthed any kids. And my father passed away when I was 35, and he had made me he had me make him a promise that if I were to ever have kids, I'd figure out how to put his name in there somewhere.
Oh, cute.
There's a whole lineage thing on both sides of my family, and so I had found myself having feelings around just even the option not even being true for
That's
me
I just pause on that for a
towards the
second because
end.
that's fucking huge. I mean, whether you wanna have kids or not, like, we have the one aspect of social conditioning that, like, we're told that, this is all
That's what
horrible.
you're supposed to do.
But then there's also, like, nobody likes to be told what to do. Like, for me, it's like, "You can't have a baby." I'd be like I mean, like, maybe I would never wanna have kids in my life. Somebody be like, "You can't have a baby." I'm like, "I'm gonna have 10." You know what I mean? Like, it does, it's just, like, it's a whole that's a big thing. That's a big thing, Chave, to, like, have I
Yeah,
like, acknowledge that, like, that
it
whether
wasn't a
that was
decision
planned
made
or not,
lightly.
but to have somebody say that you can or you shouldn't is that's hard.
Well, and no one did, which is the kinder part of the process. No one said you
Yeah,
can't or
well, yeah,
shouldn't, but just based on the information I had, the sheer number of fibroids, if I were to, like, I'm not going to go and have a slew of surgeries just to keep removing fibroids,
right,
only to still not be able to bear a kid. Like, it also informs me that maybe even in my early 30s, it wouldn't have been possible
right.
because no one took my period pain seriously.
Mhm. Yeah.
No one ever took and I also had a sensitive cervix, so sometimes during sex penetration, I would have spotting.
Mm, mhm.
My cervix scrapings would always like bleed very easily, but no one bothered to take that as potentially abnormal or something might be wrong or maybe something's growing. I know so many people who have had hysterectomies due to fibroids as we got into our late 30s and 40s, and we had no idea what was growing inside of us.
Mhm.
And no one was, and I know that huh, to this day, the medical profession still teaches that Black women don't feel pain like everyone else.
Yeah. Mhm.
So there's the level of unvocalized racism that tends to happen in medical industry as well when it comes to women, specifically Black women, and their pain tolerance levels and how serious it actually is.
Well, yeah, and a voice of being heard as well. I mean, it's
Hmm.
yeah, on many levels. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in the interesting the thing that they don't do, like not only is there already all that lack of information you spoke about earlier, no one tells you what your body's going to do or even gives you an idea of what's going to happen after your hysterectomy.
Yeah.
It's kind of like choose your adventure mystery body time. My
Yeah.
body started doing all kinds of weird shit. um like
Like what? Do you mind sharing?
like
What?
like you said, vaginal dryness. Prior to my hysterectomy, I was a slip and slide. Like, I'm gonna be a little graphic here. I could get fisted with no lube if I was excited enough, and it was delightful. And that was gone immediately. All of a
That's
sudden,
my girl. No.
it was the
Sorry it was
desert.
gone,
It was
but
right. I mean, I was. Let me tell you, my hussy times were a lot of fun. And
I said
post
this was
hist,
going to be a lively conversation.
I like it as I'm getting ready to go off to the International Miss Leather and Boot Black contest as we speak, whether it's 24-hour play space. I'm very excited. Um, but I went from like slip and slide, slide on in to like screech desert parchness. Like it was like sandpaper that I didn't understand. I didn't know what to do with it. I was
Like
like,
tumbleweeds are
what's
just rolling
this
out.
dust just flying out? Just
Dust. Oh,
like the sand, the little sand swirlies would come on
humbling
out. I don't
moment.
know
Yeah.
what was going on. It was crazy.
Hmm.
It was weird. Um, I used to be, and that's the other thing that's also kind of weird is like when you have a hysterectomy, for me, I can only speak from my own personal experience. Me and my uterus were super in sync. It's like the one part of my body I knew. Like we would have conversations, or like I'd get a twinge in my back, and I'm like, okay, 68 hours, I'm gonna start bleeding very heavily, and it would happen like clockwork. I was clockwork every 21 days
Yeah.
on the dot.
21.
And it would, yeah. But I tried birth control. Before birth control, it was 23 days. After birth control, it was 21, but it was clockwork.
Yeah.
And me and my uterus were in sync. Like I'd get the signal, be like, all right, got you, let's go. And like I knew it. And now it's gone. And it actually felt like there was an actual like hole.
Hmm.
Like I used to feel a lot of power from a uterus.
Hmm.
It was a very grounding thing for me because as we all have whatever fights we have with our bodies because society sucks and that's what ends up happening. Me and my uterus, for whatever, even though we didn't get along 2 days out of the month really well, we were in sync.
Yeah.
My brain and my uterus were super in sync, and that was gone,
Hmm. Did
and
you
it
feel
was
a sense
weird.
of sort of, yeah, I
It
guess
was
you
like it
question
felt
like a
like
mourning, like a sense of sort of like, especially I would imagine so abruptly that it's sort of like you have
yeah,
a
it was
uterus,
like
but you don't, like going
right.
through
It
a
was like a weird
gradual.
void.
Well, through a gradual transition, it's sort of like, for me, it was like like a frog in the pot heating the water. It was just this slow,
Oh,
but like, it's just like, oh God, it's a slow transition. But suddenly I'd imagine that, I
it
still
just
feel a little
gone.
bit of like, I think women, whether you love your period or whatever your relationship with it is with your uterus or your period, when it goes away, I never anticipated that I would have sort of, a bit of a I don't want to call it a sadness, but like a longing, like there's something missing,
There's
from like
it
the
feels like
moments
there's
of our
something
lives.
missing. It's
Yeah.
like all of a sudden there was this void
Hmm.
and there was a connection that was severed
Yeah.
and it was just not there.
I can imagine it must be more extreme
It
to have suddenly like a part of you removed, you know,
yeah.
in that sense. So
Yeah,
it's
and now
interesting that I'm glad to hear that you are that you had the option, and I should rephrase it. I'm glad that you it sounds like you had more information and you to make an informed choice yourself, which a lot of folks have not. And
mhm.
I is particularly, women of our mother's and grandmother's age, they just take out the whole kit and caboodle and be like, no mention of like, I know a woman that this happened to. She had to have an emergency hysterectomy while she was traveling. I don't recall why.
Mm.
They removed her uterus and her ovaries and then sent her home. And she was like hot flashes, like all just like immediate menopause, and all of the symptoms. She went to her doctor and they were like, no one talked to you or no one gave you any, yeah, it's just nothing. So I'm glad you were able to
Yeah,
keep your at least keep your ovaries so you're having some. Well, how old are you again now?
I am 44 now.
And when did you have the
When
hysterectomy?
I was 40.
Oh, 40, that's right, okay.
And so, but like for the first year and a half, it was this bizarre, like it felt like a faux period almost. There would be like this weird hormone dump, but my
Mm,
body did all the things it never did before that everyone else did. Like boob swelling, sensitive nipples, like weird. I never had that. My periods were actually very straightforward. It was like, hey, it was like my uterus was like, hey, by the way, it's time. I'm gonna start in like 6 hours. You good? I'm like, cool, I'm good. It was very chill. It was a
yeah,
very chill interaction. The PMS, sometimes there'd be some mood, like some like sensitive feelings, but aside from that, none of the body stuff, none of the extreme mood after my histo.
mhm.
I'm like, why am I sobbing at this commercial right now? Like, my nipples would get so sensitive. I have giant boobs. They're not particularly sensitive nipples because they're constantly like knocking into everything. They would get so sensitive. And my partner was like, yeah. And I was like, if you touch me, I will stab you. I will stab you. I will cut off your hand. And they were like, but I was like, no, this is not like sexy sensitive. This is really discomfort
Yeah,
sensitive because they've never been sensitive before. This is odd. Like
yeah.
my body did all these weird odd things for about a year and a half.
Did they suggest anything, about having any hormone replacement, like, taking any progesterone or testosterone, doing any blood work? No, okay. So and tell us
Nothing.
about because you had mentioned that you thankfully found a group of people who at the same time, friends or colleagues or whatever that were having hysterectomy at the same time, and so you were able to find a community, yeah?
Well, and the thing is we kind of helped each other through the like procedure and healing portion. But
Mhm.
after that, everyone had a very different experience.
Mm.
And the people I know had very hard hysterectomy procedures and healing times. Mine was super straightforward. They were just like floop, 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 and it's out.
Mm.
And my healing was just, they were just like, wow, you're healing faster than expected. I was like, great. And I had no complications.
Oh, can I
The other,
sorry to interrupt you, but
yeah,
tell us what was your how long was the surgery? How long was your recovery?
I went in at some ungodly hour in the morning. I think I was there at like 6 a.m. I probably went under around 7, 7:30. I was out of there by like noonish.
Mhm.
It was same day. Some people
Yeah.
stay overnight. Mine was same day. I was even awake when they pulled out my catheter. I don't recommend it. It was very odd.
No.
It was odd. I was like, what in the oh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've had one once in my life. It's fucking
that
weird.
was weird. So weird. So bizarre. Some people do that for fun. I don't know. I don't get it. That's fine. Um, not my kink. We're good. But I was in it was a same day and out
Mhm.
procedure for me. My procedure did take a little bit longer. I was told that there was a nick to my intestine during the procedure
Yikes.
that they were able to fix, but I had no complications from that. I had no additional anything from that. Like it was just mine was really easy breezy.
That's good. And then how long would you say that it took you to recover?
Um,
I'm knowing and noting that
I
everybody's
mean,
different, but yeah.
yeah, everyone's different. A lot of people tend to have something else going on or some other complicated something something. Mine was super straightforward. I did not work for about what I think I took 6 weeks
Mhm.
as a 4 to 6 weeks. I think 6 weeks. Yeah, I took 6 weeks. And then you're not supposed to lift things for a while. The key to any surgery, if you want to actually recover, is don't do too much when you start to feel good.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Yep.
when you start to feel good, you think you can do things, you're actually not healed enough for it yet, and then people do damage. So I did my best to not lift things more than 5 pounds.
Mhm.
But yeah, I had a very simple, straightforward. I even was healed a little faster than anticipated. Like
That's great.
I had a easy time with my histo. It was the aftermath that was weird because
Mhm.
they don't tell you anything. I got no information. I had a surgical follow up to make sure I was fine, but because I don't have a uterus or a cervix, I'm not scheduled to any gyno appointments, despite the fact that I still have my ovaries.
Hmm. Interesting because
They're, and it's
eventually
funny,
they're
they still have,
clearly still, I mean, like you said,
there's bits
they're
in there.
they're changing, and so, like,
Things are
eventually
happening.
yeah, I mean, yeah, all, ovaries, to my understanding, eventually stop producing estrogen, so, um interesting that, and again, like we've talked a lot on these circles that, hormone replacement therapy is by no means for everybody, but it's interesting how much is changing, and how, how much information is out there and how little is known by most doctors, physicians, and even OBs
Hmm.
about how to support women in that way. And, so
Yeah.
many women I hear of now they're like, well, I'm having a lot of emotion. So they give them antidepressants, and they give them antidepressants and birth control pills. And if you did some continuing education on hormone replacement therapy to see if it was a good fit, that like that could support women in that way. So I
Hmm.
think it's really changing.
Which
And
is great.
yeah, it is great. And there's so much, it's like so many conversations I'm seeing, now, just discussing this. Like it's the stigma and the silence of for generations, that it's really was only in the 1700s that in my studies that I'm finding that doctors started to make the menopause a disease of the endocrine system. And
Hmm.
that was where this became this, this whole, war on women's, just women's bodies, powers. I mean, you think of many women who, were, burned at Salem witch trials were midwives and elder women who, either
Knew the things. They knew what to do. They knew what they were doing, and most of them were burned because they knew more than the men did.
right. Or they had property that, that their neighbor wanted, and they were unwed, or they were never wed, or they never had children. They must be a
They
witch.
didn't follow the, and this is why I fully embrace my sisterhood. Hey, I mean, I'm never gonna start spinning yarn. I already have enough yarn. I have all the projects that are not finished, that are
This
mostly done.
this is
Probably
I
will never
love,
be complete.
like, I'm gonna like have to edit this and put a little like clip of like Alotta Boutté performing next to Alexander, like knitting with her, like with her baby Yoda behind her. Like I love all of the many beautiful, fierce aspects of the
Get you a girl
contrast.
who can do all the things.
That's right. That's right. I love it. Well, okay, so tell us a little bit more about your that group. So how did you find this group? It sounds like that was pretty
They
instrumental.
are they were actually they're mutual performer friends.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah.
And then like, support groups pop up on the internet for meal trains and that kind of stuff post surgery. And so um yeah,
Well,
first one friend had one and then I had mine, and then while I was talking to my friend about our other friend, I went and had mine, and then she was like, "Hey, so I just found out." And I was like,
mhm.
"Yeah, that's no, oh wait, rewind. I had yeah, I had mine taken out when I was 40. I was this is like, did I get my years mixed up? No, I did not. So actually just before I had my surgery, I already had mine scheduled. Another friend was like, hey, so I think I'm about to go in and have one as well. So she had hers shortly after I had mine. But she had much, hers was more than just a fibroid situation. There was an actual, like, different, whole, more intensive medical situation for her. So she and I were good support for each other in the process of having the hysterectomy and some care afterwards. But like further conversations post histo don't really happen. I'm very open about probably too many things, and I just talk freely about a lot of the
About you.
stuff.
I love it. I love it. No, I
But
think
like,
there's something interesting about, our Western world is so medicalized about, they're really, like I've said, when in our intro is, that menopause is a familial, it's a biological, it's a cultural, it's a, physiological, it's all of these things. And so like it's not like just like we're just going to take out this uterus. It's like you're not getting your tire changed. I think having,
mhm,
you know, more awareness, because you don't know what you don't know, like I think that just a heads up to women that it can feel really isolating, right? I mean, what's beautiful about menopause is that I think one of the beautiful things is that there is everyone's unique journey.
mhm,
Everybody's journey is different, but the flip side of that is that can feel really isolating, right? I think a lot of people have transitioned through their menopause very alone, and then coupled with, historically, just not even a generation or two ago, was, you would institutionalize women who were going through menopause, or having,
mhm,
or not agreeable, or were, having emotion, were, emotional. And so there's a real genuine visceral fear in our bodies about wanting to share these stories and to talk. And so
mhm,
um I'm happy that that's changing, and I think that I'm so glad that you found people to, that the planets aligned and you
mhm,
were able to find people to have that support through, because I don't think that, whether it is sudden or gradual, it is, I think it's a powerful and incredible transition. While it's a journey and it can
mhm.
sort of suck at times, it's fucking rad. Like
Well,
menopause
and
is can be a beautiful transition in becoming who you really have always wanted to become, and letting go a lot of these like social expectations of,
mhm.
societal or others, or,
Well, and what's interesting is I have a lot of my post hysterectomy talk with trans men
Mhm.
primarily. Um, and it's really interesting to talk to a variety of different uterine having people, just because there's many different feelings about it
Mhm.
and many different journeys around it. And it was funny. And it's one of my housemates, prehisto, but during my process of trying to figure out what's going on, I would always give a shout. My uterus was the one uterus to rule them all. Not only was it like heavy flow for a good 2 to 3 days every month, and it was like clockwork though, it would pull everybody to its orbit. Like you would be, not only if your period was erratic, if your period was whatever, it would come onto my schedule. My uterus would just like, wrinkle, you're all on my schedule now. 21 days, let's
Your
go.
uterus is
And
strong.
so, and so like I had a trans housemate for a minute, and if he wasn't on his T, I would give him 3-day warnings. I was like, this is your 3-day warning. This is your 3-day warning. My period is coming. You might want to make sure you're up on your T. And so it's like, oh shit, I gotta go take a shot, do the thing. Um, but yeah, it just um but the lack of information post histo is funny because I typically have those conversations with trans men.
Mhm.
Who also very in a different experience due to the hormone treatments to be the men that they are.
Mhm.
Um, and so I'm really grateful for the conversations I have had. And I think part of why I get to have those conversations is because I'm just like, I've had a hysterectomy. And I refuse to have any like like the only weirdness I have about it is just the weirdness that exists in the process of it and the severe lack, like no information. The most information I got is what I told you is if I take my ovaries out, I would be thrown into sudden menopause. That is the only post histo information I received.
Yeah.
It. And so it's been really fascinating to be very candid about my histo out in the world at large because it's more common than people think. It
It
happens a
is.
lot more often. Our society is so baby focused that it's one of those things that kind of gets buried under the rug and murder, murder. It's one,
Yep.
and and I think it plays into the whole descendants lineage. Once upon a time, that's how you would like merge properties and power
Hmm.
is through your children. And if you couldn't have children, you were then worthless because how could you possibly contribute to the property the whole thing? And I remember my mom is very Catholic. She's
Hmm.
very Catholic. And she came at me about the Bible once, and it did not go well for her because you raised me to read the Bible. And so I quoted it back to her and I said, I went through the whole thing and I was like, your poly cotton blends are not allowed. You got to change your clothing. You got to stop eating shrimp. They're bottom feeders. You got to stop eating catfish. Not only are they bottom feeders, they don't have scales. And don't be upset if dad trades you for cattle because you are past childbearing years. It says it in Leviticus. My mom was so taken aback. I was like, but it's in there.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so like sometimes I cackle about being in my cattle years because
That's a greatest term. I love that. The cattle years. Oh my God, that's so funny. Well, thank you for mentioning that too about the perspective of trans men. That's something I haven't really had the opportunity to talk with many trans men about that experience. And like I said, it's like menopause happens to people, and every journey is different. And um, yeah, I think that's a voice that should be heard, but I also recognize that there's a real vulnerability in anybody sharing their story, and particularly trans men sharing their
yeah.
story. So,
And the medical industry is not kind to them.
no. No.
All on a larger scale, not kind. Like I live in a little bubble. Even in San Francisco, Oakland, there can be struggles, but it's a nicer bubble than most. And many will very purposefully come here so that they can get medical assistance. Um, but also, what kind of prompted me to sort of stay on top of my uterus stuff is my ex was a trans man, the one who encouraged me to get an ultrasound. They were like, I had an ovarian cyst that made everything horrible. Like their bits and pieces ended up coming out in bits and pieces because of a variety of medical things, but they weren't looking for anything else every time they went in there. They could have done it all in one thing if they would have done bothered to pay attention and they didn't. So it just was bits and pieces for him. So he was like, you should get an ultrasound. Let's make sure it's not anything cuckoo bananas in there. And if it is, let's figure it out so we could
Ooh,
do it in one.
bananas in
I
there.
mean, that's
There's
my words.
monkeys swinging
Those
from
are my
trees
words.
in there.
Those are my words.
Yeah.
Those are my words.
No, I love your
I
words.
but he definitely was like, this is what happened to me. They didn't bother to look when I told them I had the pain, this, that, and the other. So you should probably get an ultrasound just to be on the safe side because it sounds like he got fibroids that are getting worse because that's what happened to him.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so it's,
that's,
you know,
all the more reason, women's health, unimportant. So having all the more reason to be our own advocates and, educating ourselves and being, it's why, I felt so inspired to start having these conversations is because we do all have wisdom. We do all have experience to share, and we can, support each other in our journeys. And sometimes even if it's just to not feel like you're alone, or it's been wonderful to start having conversations and hear more about the unique journeys, of people. And yeah, so um What do you think? I meant to ask you, I was sort of thinking in the timeline. Um,
Mhm.
so you were back in San Francisco. I just was so in my experience, the coursework that I'm doing, they're based in the UK, and I'm finding that, the just Europe in general, sort of not surprising, is like light years ahead of us as far as, just women's health and supporting women and, not perfect by any means, but yeah, I was wondering if, like, because you were already back, you were not. I wondered what it was like while you were in France.
Oh, I
This
didn't
wasn't
deal
happening.
with this was not happening then. I didn't deal with too much medical stuff in France.
Yeah,
Although I do like the osteopath action that happens in Europe or in Paris particularly. As
osteopath action.
osteopath is like a combination of massage body work and like sports medicine and like they like do with like body mechanics, if you will. Because what had happened was is before the second season of the show, my knee popped out of place
Oh,
like the day 2 days before I was supposed to fly back to Paris.
tell us what the show is, because
The
it's
show is the Mugler Follies. Terry Mugler, the couture fashion designer, decided to put on a folly show and wrote a part for me. And so I went to Paris for 2 years. Um, most major things in Paris take the month of August off. So I was home for that month. And of course, 2 days right before I'm about to fly back, I'm running out my house for a photo shoot. My knee pops, costumes go flying, and I'm laid out on the stairwell.
oh, oh,
And so um, my knee went out, which then made my hips go out, which then made my back go out, which then squashed my sciatic. I was in a lot of pain the whole
oh,
second season. And every week they had an osteopath come in and she would literally realign my body. It's different. It's like if bodywork and chiropractic had some like weird mutant child that also incorporated sports medicine
yeah,
somehow got in there.
sign me up. Awesome.
Right. Absolutely. Sign me up all day. Like so good. I found that Paris had this nice, interesting, like mesh of I don't want to say holistic, but more like naturopathy type approach to their medicine.
Hmm.
So like, yes, I got a cortisone shot and a scope to see what was going on with my voice, but they also gave me like natural oil steams and such to like help with my throat health at the same time. So it was I like that matchup for the like we're not gonna just fully pump you with steroids and give you more steroid medicine to deal with this polyp on your vocal cords. We're gonna do this steam. We're gonna give you the one shot, but only the one shot, and let's see if this helps a thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, cool.
All about balance. Balance, finding the balance
I
between.
liked it a lot.
Yeah, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
Um,
And
what
when you'd go to the pharmacy, there was like a whole wall of essential oils.
Oh, the French. Oh, France.
So good.
Hey, how are you feeling now? Where are you like stepping into now? Like,
Um,
how are you?
so my hormones have pretty much leveled out. Like I haven't had any weird sensitivities or like mood things and like boob swellings and things. Um, in addition to that, a year ago I had weight loss surgery.
Mm,
My injuries had gotten to a point where my injuries plus speech like Babylon closing plus a pandemic sent me into a depression.
mm,
Um, there was some weight gain when my incidental mobilities were shut down, and just it was this spinning of like losing my mobility, and I was looking at never performing again. I was just in too much pain. I couldn't even stand to sing a number
yeah.
without hobbling badly
Mm.
and just being in so much pain. And so I had weight loss surgery last year and my body feels really good actually.
Hmm.
There's a hydration issue, like my lips are constantly chapped and I definitely need to drink more water. That's always been an issue for me, drinking beverages. But um I was able to do turns for the first time in like 7 years. I don't know. It's been a while since I've been able to like move my body in a way that felt good. I
Yeah.
used to come off stage at I used to do 2 shows at Beach Blanket, and I remember one of the show managers was there that night. I'd gotten called in, so I wasn't expecting to be there, and he said, "You did a great show tonight." I was like, "Thank you." And then he saw me limp down the stairs to go to my car and goes, "That's a mighty big limp you got going there." And I said, "Rick, I always limp off
Mm,
after the show." And he said, "I would have never known by how you performed on stage." Like,
mm,
"Thank you." But it
yeah.
was getting to the point where I did a show where I sang one song. That's all I had to do was stand and sing a song. It hurt so bad.
Mm.
I had to do something because I
Yeah.
couldn't do the physical stuff to help me either. I was doing some of it, but like
It's
it all just hurt all the time.
it's all a journey though, right? Of like being
Yeah,
aware of having that body awareness, figuring out like what works for us, finding those resources. I applaud it. I
that's
applaud
the
your
thing.
journey. I'm glad
Yeah.
you're doing
So
better.
like combination of the histo and now with the weight loss surgery, I'm doing a lot better.
Yeah,
I
good.
can move. And when people are like, "Oh, my period," I'm like, "Oh yeah, that sucks. I remember that."
Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember that. Oh, back in the day. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting too to find that like as that estrogen and, progesterone start to wane, that how tissue begins to change. And again, like I've said, hormone replacement therapy, not for everybody, but I always encourage people to just talk to their doctor about or find the right doctor is also the key. I would imagine in
Mm,
San Francisco there you have some, informed, great clinics and informed folks about hormone replacement therapy or some support. Yeah, you're
that I mean, I would hope so. My history with OBGYNs, I've never liked mine. I've had several over the years, and the reason why I don't like mine, even the women doctors, people who actually have uteri, who were my doctors, no one really listened to
listen,
me when I would say things.
I
I'm like,
just hallelujah found someone recently who is the first time that I feel like somebody who actually fucking listened to me. Listen to all of me. Not
I
like
love that.
I have, like you just feel them like, okay, I have to go now. Like, and I think it's really changing. As I said, in my studies have found that, evidently less than 1 in 4 GPs have any training about menopause at all. And less than 30% of residencies offer any menopause medicine at all. So it is like the blind leading the blind. It's changing and it's changing quickly. But the damage that some of these, really botched studies about hormone replacement therapy have done tremendous damage to women's health care, I think. And again, like I don't even know I think I shared that I started taking some hormone replacement therapy a few months ago. It's fucking changed my life. It has changed my life. It is not for everybody, but I didn't even know it was an option 8 years ago or even 4 years ago because nobody listened to my shit. I mean, I had extreme symptoms that were due to perimenopause by fluctuation, like extreme migraines and, where I was puking my guts out for 12 hours and
Oh
incapacitated for
no.
72 hours. I mean, unacceptable. Not one single person was like, you're, 46. Maybe you're in perimenopause. We should, maybe you're having a big, change in hormones. Maybe we should check your hormone levels. Not one person. Bell's palsy, I had twice on opposite sides of my face within 3 months of each other. Nobody, even neurologists with, had MRIs, all, autoimmune panel. Not one doctor said, oh, maybe it's menopause. Maybe there's a infl because Bell's palsy is inflammation in the inner ear that suppresses the seventh cranial nerve that is what moves your face. It's inflammation. That's what happens to women's bodies in when they are in perimenopause and menopause as their hormones start to shift. So, stepping off my soapbox, I hear you. And it's so frustrating that women are not heard and my gynecologist, who I liked, fine. She was in a very revered clinic previously to this one. She was like, "Oh, okay, well, it's 365 days. You're in menopause now. Do you have any vaginal dryness?" I was like, No, should I? Like, is that a thing?" Yep, and if you do, just let me know. I have a cream for that. That's it. That was our whole entire conversation. So I think it's changing, and there are certainly in Minnesota, I'm pushing folks to just at least explore with their own doctors, looking into having some blood work done, because it was really fascinating to see where my hormone levels were, and I was hugely discrepant in my hormones, and no wonder I was fucking depressed and had anxiety and like all of these things. And so
Hmm.
for me, it was a good fit. I'm still figuring it out. I don't know if how long I will continue to do that, but I feel different in my even my respiratory feels different. The texture of my skin feels different. I mean, so many things feel like, oh God, like I just got like the Tin Woman, like I just like oiled all the, you know what I mean? Like I'm suddenly not
Hmm.
like an old tractor, like I feel like I don't want to feel like I'm 20 years old. I don't need that. But I would
Hmm.
like to feel like I'm not a fucking Tin Woman. So anyway, I
Yeah.
always encourage people, if you can, like you have done too, like don't find your own information, find your communities, and just do, dig in and do your research and have the conversations, and we have to be our own best advocates, you
Yeah,
know.
and I highly encourage people when they start talking to me about some of their symptoms, I'm like, it sounds familiar. Have them dig deeper. You have to, and sadly, we have to be the ones to push for it, but you have to dig deeper because they're not going to suggest it.
Hmm.
Unless it's something extreme, they're not going to even bother. And even when it's something extreme, they're still not going to follow up after. So
Yep. Hey, what does it mean to be a wise woman, or even a wise?
I give it a lot less fucks.
I love
I give it a
that.
lot less fucks. I'm like, okay, I don't have it. It's interesting because I'm just like, everyone likes it. It gets better. I was like, I don't know if it gets better, but I feel like I handle things differently,
Mhm.
and that's what feels better.
I love that.
And so yeah, I think I just there's less fucks. I'm like, okay, if that's what you need to do for yourself, go ahead. It's not going to bring you joy. It's not going to change anything. Not going to make you feel better. But if that's how you want to act, cool. I'm gonna be over here, and when you're done, then we can have the conversation.
I hear
So,
that, sister. I love it. Yeah, I think there's definitely something about, when I was younger, I think many of us are very reactionary. And as you're stepping into that, that wise person space of really more of a knowing, it's more about reflection rather than reactionary. And that's like, I think that's cool. I really,
mhm.
yeah.
Mm.
Well, I'm gonna leave that on that last note, and we have a few more minutes. If if any of our guests have any questions or thoughts to share, you can unmute yourself.
I'll
Hello.
just I'll unmute just to
Hi.
say thank you because
Yeah.
this was really cool to be a part of. My sister had a hysterectomy when she was 35, um, medical reasons and all that, and had to seriously advocate for herself in the Bay Area. So better than I guess other places. But it was when I was like just a little older than that, I was having a geriatric pregnancy, and they were like all the like you're old, you have to be safe, everything's dangerous about being pregnant. And she was like, they're like, well, what if you do want to get married? She was like, I don't care. If she was like bleeding through her shoes, her period was so bad. And it was
Oof.
finally an iron test that won the doctors over. She was so iron deficient from losing all the blood. But anyway, it's been cool to listen to this because it helps me even understand her perspective. Like, our mom never talked about menopause. I think I told you, Laura, like I think she's probably still getting her period and she's 75, as far as I know.
Yeah.
She's no idea. But my sister's like, when I tell her about menopause stuff or, symptoms of perimenopause, she's like, "Ah, I thought it was going to be really easy. And I'm like, no, I don't know. It might be. I mean, maybe, but
I have no idea what mine's gonna look like.
yeah, that's what I'm
It's
like,
like
it might
Adventure
be.
Time,
It is like that.
Mysteryland.
That's what she was like, can you send me a spreadsheet of symptoms? I was like,
A spreadsheet of I've read that there's somewhere between easily 50 symptoms, 50 different and more symptoms of
mhm.
perimenopause and
Well,
menopause.
I think that's so interesting.
There's even one where like like your tongue itches, like you have an itching
Your
tongue.
ears, inside of your ears itch. That's
Weird.
one too. I know.
But
I found my own, like, dialed for dollars to get my doctor that would prescribe because I had so many symptoms that once I started adding them up, I was like, well, why hasn't anyone said anything to me? I'm 51 right now. And never what you've gained a little weight around your middle. You should try to lose that.
mhm.
Go on the Mediterranean diet. You
Yep.
have migraines. They're different than they used to be. You have all these, like, your numbers are worse. This is interesting. My numbers, like, that your all your testing that you do, they were worse last year than they've ever been before. And the doctor that gave me the HRT, she was like, don't get retested for a few months because I'm pretty sure they'll go down because estrogen will help with that too. And I was like, Sissy, nobody said anything. And I think just at a certain age, they could start being like, hey, are you having any symptoms? Hey, are you
Yeah.
having anything? Here's a list of 50 things. Do you have any of them? But it's been cool to hear this from other, different perspectives and different experiences. So thank you both.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
pleasure.
Thanks for joining us. And
Mhm.
thank you, Cheve, for sharing. I can
Thank you
share
for
that.
having me.
Yeah, yeah. We have another dear friend next month. Will be on May 19th, featuring holistic nutrition and wellness coach Alyssa Abrahamson, also known as Mini Tonka. That'll be 5 p.m. Central Standard Time, and really last
Nice.
just tell your stories, ask your questions, and share your wisdom. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you at the next Wisdom Circle.